disappointed in their performance at Foxborough last year, to say the least, and Phillip Rivers in particular. But still, for a team, like, the team is very good on paper. And while I expected them to also not get it done when it counted most in the playoffs, they're not getting it done when it doesn't even count most. They're just not really that good. And I don't know what happened.
They're the most disappointing team for me. So much so that I'm not going to sit up here and advocate for somebody to be fired, but if Arthur Blank decided to go in a different direction from Dan Quinn, I'm not going to argue with it. What do I always say, Max and Molly? What am I religiously focused on?
Resume?
What is your job description? What got you there? Dan Quinn is the former defensive coordinator for the #1 ranked defense that was the Seattle Seahawks, the Legion of Boom. You come to Atlanta and suddenly you don't have a defense. You're ranked second to last in points allowed. You're one of the worst pass defenses in the National Football League. You ain't that great against the run. Everyone knows they can score on you. Minnesota dropped 28 on you. The Eagles dropped 20, even though you played decent defense. You should have lost that game if Nelson Aguilar caught that pass. Indy scored 27 on you. The Titans scored 24 on you. And Deshaun Watson and the Houston Texans put up 53 on you yesterday. Can't stop a cold right now, okay? Dan, but the biggest thing and the most egregious thing to me, you're Matt Ryan, who's completed 70% of his passes, by the way, although it's just 11 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. How in God's name are you losing games? And you got Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley, and Mohamed Sanu. How in God's name are you 1-4? This is some inexcusable stuff. There's no excuse for it. This is a guy that once took you to the Super Bowl. And remember, Kyle Shanahan was his offensive coordinator. And for some inexplicable reason, you decide to keep throwing the ball instead of running it with a 25-point lead in the Super Bowl that you blew. And they have never, ever recovered since. Something is wrong. Something needs to be done about it. I don't know what it is, but I don't know too many teams, too many coaches that will be 1-4 with that offensive firepower.
I'll tell you, you can make a case for the Falcons again. I've seen that the trend is not going up for the Falcons. I was surprised by their success against the Eagles. When you look at the Chargers, okay, so they beat the Colts week 1, right? By a couple field goals. And the Colts were still finding their way because they had just lost Andrew Luck. And otherwise, they've beaten the Dolphins, and they've lost to everyone else. Texans are good, but they're not great. The Lions are a nice team. They've lost to both of them. They were supposed to beat the Broncos. I know it's a divisional rival, but they haven't been good, and they lost. If the Chargers wind up with 6-7 wins, I can't think of a more kind of quality team with a worse record than that, and that's what they're on pace for, a season like that.
Yeah, the Chargers game obviously disappointing yesterday, too. By the way, we asked folks at home earlier, did the Cowboys get exposed? 86% said yes.
Why? Because the Cowboys finally are going up against the football teams, not jokes of a team, and they're struggling right now. I reckon things are a little bit difficult down there in the South. We got to figure it out.
Those linebackers, I was talking to Dan Orlovsky about it, why are they having such a hard time with running backs who can catch the ball, right? Yeah. The linebackers, according to Dan, their aggression is being used against them. Nevertheless, when you look at that linebacking core, they should not be getting done like that.
No question. While we have a few seconds left, by the way, huge shout out to Christian McCaffrey. I made the big mistake, picked with my heart Saquon Barkley on my fantasy team, not McCaffrey, but that guy was impressive.
Because Saquon's hurt, Molly.
Yeah, he's hurt.
Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah, and next man up is hurt
remember
too.
What I said. Remember what I said. Reverse discrimination. If Christian McCaffrey were black, we'd be talking about him
MVP
more.
candidate. We'll be talking about McCaffrey.
He's
little Saquon
special at
Jr.
Stanford.
Monday Night Football will be good.
Now.
It's Niners, Browns. We'll talk about it all tomorrow.